It's Social Media Saturday, and I'm back with another incredible guest, Scarlett Seaver, who is the Chief Strategy and Growth Officer of Money 2020. She's also an international speaker, a board member, a contributor to Forbes, and she is also a former social media client of mine. So, Scarlett, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
For you, Shelby, the world. Always happy to do it, absolutely. And love talking about social media. So it's a topic you and I have obviously had a shared passion for sometimes. So certainly happy to dive in and discuss.
Definitely. I think that we ended up working together for about 4 years through the pandemic as well. So definitely had a lot of fun times together. And actually, Social Media Saturday is based off of a series that I worked on with Scarlett, which is called Tech Tuesday. You can go and find more information about it, see all of those awesome interviews about tech and fintech updates. But so Scarlett, I mean, I know some of your background, but I would just love to hear in your words, like, how did you get to where you are in your career? A little bit
Sure.
about your story.
Absolutely. First of all, I smile internally and externally knowing that Tech Tuesday was, part of the inspiration for this, because obviously that was such a passion project for me, and I didn't know exactly I knew a high level of what I wanted to, but how to do it, and you and I kind of co-created the vision for that, so that's so exciting. Yeah, so I'd say, long story short, social media has had a huge impact in my career in that, I came from a small town in Colorado, moved to New York, went to school here, graduated, was trying to figure out what that right path was for me, ended up getting into entrepreneurship, had my own startup, and I'd be going to networking events, as you do, looking at, trying to raise that next round of funding. And over again, I kept hearing about, especially from like an investor, whether you're talking about angel networks or traditional venture capitalists, the importance of warm intros and warm introductions, and not just like cold emailing people. And I didn't have any of that. And so I really started utilizing social media as that way to like build those bridges and get to know people that I didn't know, because I didn't come from a network at all. And I didn't know anyone really on the East Coast. So social media became my outlet and my powerhouse to get networked without having that in my background. And I've used that in so many different ways in my life and connected with incredible people quite literally all over the world. And as the world has moved more and more global, like, you find people with similar interests quite literally a 12, 14, 18-hour flight away, but that you have connection points. And especially for me, being based in New York, it's kind of a hub. And so people would be flying through here, we'd go grab coffee. But a lot of those introductions all started through social media. And I used that as I built my career in financial services, and making sure that, depending on where I was and what I was doing, like, each respective platform, whether it be Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever else, was the right place and platform to have those conversations and move the dialogue forward as it related to things that I was doing in my job, like fintech, which is the center of what I do now, and even within my current role. So.
Quite the journey that you've had, and I really love to hear how social media helped you expand your network. And really, that's something that I witnessed with you while we were working on Tech Tuesday, and as you were as you were kind of building your brand online. And it was really the motivation for me doing this. Like, I've been able to have conversations with people in my network, with business owners, and it just is like, it's a really cool aspect of social media that you can reach people across anywhere in the world on topics that you are interested in. And I'm sure that there are a lot of other people who are interested in kind of creating that thought leadership for themselves and building their brand online. So do you have any advice for other people who are looking to become thought leaders on LinkedIn, for example, or Twitter?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. So if we talk about Tech Tuesday in particular, there is a lot about expanding the network and giving and utilizing the platform in interesting ways. But for me too, I was already, because of what I had built on social media the 5+ years before then, I had already had quite a diverse network from people across industries all over the world. And I wanted to utilize Tech Tuesday as an opportunity to highlight unique voices and unique stories in a compelling way that like resonated with people. But in terms of how that could transition to anyone who wanted to utilize, let's say LinkedIn, because obviously that's my current favorite platform of choice and has been for some time now. I think it's really important to do some self analysis and introspection about what it is that it is you're like your unique voice or what you want to talk about, because there's a lot of noise out there. And by the way, it doesn't have to be one thing. It could be three things. It could be five things, like whatever that is. But if you kind of have a lane, then people know that, like, obviously you're talking about social media. So when I'm thinking of Shelby, I'm thinking of social media. When I'm thinking of Scarlett, I'm thinking of fintech. When I started, actually, it wasn't fintech. I was in startups. So I talked a lot about like leadership, management, startup life, just like the startup hustle, startup grind, anything from funding to hiring to operations, you name it. And not surprisingly, the crowd or the followership that I had acquired was directly related to tech and startups. And then when I moved into fintech, it was actually quite interesting because I had spent so long building up like the startup entrepreneur thing that when fintech started, not immediately, but the more that I started like pumping out fintech related content, my followership changed, and it actually went down in some ways, and some like really prominent VCs that I respected stopped following me. And I was a bit offended, but I'm like, I mean, I guess it makes sense because their expertise or their passion wasn't in fintech, and now that was the primary thing that I was talking about. But the end result was my followership grew even more because I found a dedicated, more specific, like startups is quite vague. It's still a topic, but it's quite a big topic. You get into fintech and you're getting into a smaller universe. So even though I had an initial drop off and I lost some people that were like ego hits for me, it really did help overall because my content was even more specific and it actually really increased my followers. So I think it is just like being very intentional about the type of stuff that you want to talk about, and quite frankly it should be a combination of what you're an expert in and what you're passionate in, and then that will be very evident to those online. But I have other friends who do it, and not that they don't have strategic approaches, but they're much more casual in it, where like with other social platforms that you would use on a personal level, they do the kind of similar thing professionally. So they will post about a meeting that they had that day or an insight that they had on something else. And so it's in those cases, those are a bit more like stream of consciousness. And I've seen some of them have quite consistent growth even on a platform like LinkedIn. But even though maybe there is not the strategic, I'm talking about leadership, fintech, and like whatever, what they are doing naturally is like they are in a lane in the sense of they're showing a personal side of you. They're showing a, hey, combination of personal, professional, and that attracts a certain audience as well. So it really is just, what is it that is your thing that you care a lot about, that you have a fair amount of things flowing in your brain, so it's not going to be a one-off and you're not going to do it again. But equally, like I said, that you are, you have a unique perspective and that people are going to gravitate towards.
Totally. And you hit on a couple really key points there. I mean, it sounds like there's not really one approach that fits all for this. You can get really strategic with it, or the kind of more stream of consciousness example that you were sharing. But I do think that it is, and this, I mean, I see this with clients that I'm working with or in my current position right now, like to have some sort of strategy is important. Like kind of defining how many times am I going to post a week, or what topics am I posting on, creating that list for yourself, and as much as you can, defining what it is that you want to be talking about. And I saw with you, it was really successful, kind of, not to just be fintech, but also other parts of your identity or your personality, the woman in fintech aspect. I remember those were always great posts, well-performing posts for you, or this passion for highlighting diverse voices and diverse stories, contributing to the success of social media strategy. So, or not social media, Tech Tuesday.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I didn't say those things. But it is, so it was that, okay, broader category, but then it was, okay, so back to the what is it you're passionate about. I care a lot about I care a lot about empowering and providing opportunities for women, and then also diverse people of diverse backgrounds, because if that's something that I believe is my mission and is something that is true to me and how I think and how I wake up every morning, then I want my platforms to be reflective of that. And not surprisingly, what I kind of said and you really highlighted, which is when you are passionate about something, it shows up as more authentic because it's real, and so people connect to it in a different way. And that's also a really great thing too. So totally 100%. And that's the whole part with Tech Tuesday, right? And if you remember back when that got started, there was a lot of vacillating on what the title would be, and should it be a female and FinTech Friday thing, or like what it is. And it's like, you know what, this is going to evolve over time, and I don't want to like isolate it too much where people don't think that it's applicable to them. Because if you remember, we've had like beauty tech on there and health tech on there. Yes, it definitely skews towards fintech, but it gave opportunity for a broader category. And I wanted it to be about tech while also highlighting those voices without being like, this is about women, this is about minorities, because it was about that, but it didn't need to be explicit in it. I was very intentional about that. So
yeah, and I think that you walked that line well, and that brings up just the importance of kind of asking yourself the question, like, why am I doing this? And separating that why from all the pressure that exists to be active on social media and potentially be a thought leader in your field. Like it can be overwhelming if you approach it from that lens of like, I have to do this in order to build my brand, and this is just what somebody does with their career in 2023, versus like, I'm really passionate about this and I want to create this change in the world, and I'm using social media as a tool to achieve that. So I think that you did that really clearly. So, well, thank you so much, Scarlett, again, for your time. I'm wondering if is there one piece of advice that you can share with people maybe who are also juggling full-time careers and families as you are, on how to use social media intentionally?
First of all, thank you again for having me. Very, very happy to be here. I would say going and doing something, you use the word thought leader. There's many words to describe having an ongoing, like consistent, large voice on social. I think it's not for the faint of heart, right? So it is just, if this is something that anyone can go in and have casual conversations and post sporadically, which I encourage people to do, because you never know who you're going to get a response from and who you're going to touch and how that's going to impact you as an individual or you as a professional. But if this is something that you have, as we talked about, like as a strategy, you got to buckle up for the ride and be prepared for the things that you started talking about earlier a little bit, Shelby. But just to elaborate, like, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot, like, so it's something that you have to sit here and commit to mentally, to say, I'm going to commit to doing X amount of posts a week. And obviously if 1 week it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world, but the next week it should definitely happen. And I'm going to commit to X amounts of XYZ, where you really, it's something that you want to have a bigger strategy for than just like a random, like, hey, let's see how I feel today. And there's a lot of resources out there that can help you get started. And of course, depending on who you are, because the second part you were asking around is combination of work, life, personal, mommyhood and everything else. Like, it takes a village. Anything in life takes a village, including this, which is obviously why you and I worked together for 4 years before you decided to go have a full-time job. But yes, that's why, because so you want to, like, for me, it's like finding people who are experts at things that you're not. So I know what my passion was, I know what my strategy was, and how do I find the best to help me accelerate that. And that's how we worked, and why we worked well. That's why we did it for 4 years, because obviously it worked quite well. So yeah, that's what I would say. Takes a village, and you want to be intentional about what you're trying to do, because it's a long journey.
Definitely. I feel that it takes a lot of work. But yes, as much as you can get support and resources that are out there, the better. So thank you again so much, Scarlett. Always good to see you and to catch up with you. And for anybody watching, if you would like to learn more about Scarlett, she is a fascinating woman doing amazing things. You can read her full interview below, and find her social links to follow her on LinkedIn and Twitter. So thank you.